People who work in HR, what's the wildest thing you've discovered that led to firing in the course of your career? Obligatory, not HR, but a contractor for the US federal government, USGS, brought his work laptop into an unauthorized country on personal vacation and then tried to use it. Taking a government issued laptop across country lines requires a great deal of paperwork, depending on the data security and likelihood of theft in said country. This guy brought his laptop into a red flagged country, worst data security, on a personal vacation. When he logged on, his IP was instantly flagged and it bricked the entire laptop remotely. Obvious instant termination. Don't duck with federal government property, folks. Dude requested a letter from HR to provide his insurance company to state that he was on shift on a particular day at a particular time and therefore could not have been the one driving when his car was involved in an accident. For similar letters in the past, we provide 1. Their roster for the day, 2. Confirmation of their clock in and out times, and 3. Their scan in and out times of their security ID. To show someone was rostered on, clocked in and didn't leave the building before clocking out. Turns out this guy hadn't actually worked that day, and when he realized we would actually check before putting it in writing, tried to use his supervisor level access to alter historical records to say that he was on shift. He got caught out because the system wouldn't let you alter your own roster. When the inevitable "no, we will not help you commit insurance fraud, turn in your ID" conversations happened and all facts presented to him, it was the only time I've heard a union rep say words to the effect of entirely siding with HR in a dismissal. We had an administrator that was in charge of the program that oversaw the entire operations of the two company jets. She would regularly schedule and fly her kids to visit their grandparents 5 states away. One of the pilots filed a complaint for misuse of the company jets. Guess who they fired? The pilot, for not keeping his mouth shut. Car dealership. Co-owner of the company had a used car lot he had registered under a friend's name. The big dealership would take in used cars. He'd pay a technician off the books to give it a bad inspection so the car would go to auction. He'd use the other company to purchase the cars for dirt cheap and sell the cars at a huge profit margin. Essentially got our KBB rep fired because she was evaluating trade-ins as being in good condition, but the inspections would all come back bad. So in the company's eyes, she was terrible at her job and paying people way too much for their trade-ins. They started to catch on when they realized close to 40% of all the trade-ins were getting poor inspections. So they implemented a system where 2 technicians each did their own inspections. Suddenly, not so many cars were getting poor inspections. Then it all unraveled when they looked into it deeper and realized every single bad inspection came from 1 technician. In total, they estimated roughly $400K in profit had been stolen from the company over the past couple years. It was pretty messy. What happened to the Kelly rep? So, she had gotten let go quite a while before everything went down. Took a job at another dealership and all was fine. The owner of the company is a good dude who trusted the wrong guy to make his partner. The shady co-owner had worked there for like 25 years before he was brought on as partner and was supposed to succeed the owner when he retired. Owner was really heartbroken about the whole thing. I don't blame him. He built that company up from nothing, pays his employees very well, and never hesitated to toss extra money in people's paychecks when they were in a tough spot. Nobody ever asked for it. Like, one guy's wife had severe complications while giving birth and it racked up some heavy hospital bills. Owner took a pretty large sum of money from his own bank account to help them out. I've worked at several dealerships, and that one was by far the most reputable and honest one I've seen. It's a real shame that other scumbag took advantage and used the company as his own bank. Years ago, I was covering as both HR and LP manager for a district in a now defunct retail chain. The stores carried a variety of adult magazines, also now all defunct. Overstock for these lucrative and quick selling products were in a storeroom. There was a very small, for the time, camera in the room. One day, I was reviewing footage at a store and Z was idly watching an assistant manager restock after closing. Then something odd happened. He was taking one copy of each adult magazine, opening it to photo spread, and laying it down on the floor. Soon, there was about 15 magazines spread out. He left for a moment, and then returned in view of the cam completely naked. Then he laid down on the magazines and started rolling around and, well, you can guess what happened next. I met with him the next day and said, I need to let you know there's a camera in the magazine storage area. He stood up, said okay then, and walked out of the store. I ended up putting him our system as resigned, and didn't dispute his unemployment claim when he filed. I went ahead and told the next person who took over the restocking job that a camera was there before he even touched a single magazine. My friend worked at support for a hospital. They would have the ability to remote desktop into employees' laptops even without authentication from the user, but was only supposed to be done under special circumstances. He had an urgent ticket which required a remote login, but the doctor was completely unreachable, so he ended up just connecting to the laptop. Turns out the doctor was watching porn at that very moment, and he immediately logged out, hoping nothing would come of it. Apparently the doctor reported the situation, landing them both in trouble. I heard a story of a guy using an unmarked company car to run Uber Eats and DoorDash all day. He got away with it for a couple years. He finally got caught because he was using his work phone for Uber and his data was astronomically higher than anyone else in the company. If he had just used his personal phone, he probably could still be going. One of the salespeople has printed their new offer of employment from a direct competitor from a company laptop on a company printer and forgot it there. She was not the sharpest tool in the shed. All of her stuff got immediately locked and she had also tried to download the whole client database and sent it as attachment from her work email to her private one. All this happened in one day. I feel like the stealing of company data to move to a new company is very common. So, I used to work at a software company and we kept getting complaints about an app room being cluttered and trash from the nearby break room being left around in the mornings. So we asked security to do some late evening walk-bys to see what was going on. One evening, they found a young Asian woman hiding in the nap room. She didn't work there and she didn't speak English. It was super weird. It turns out, one of the software engineers who worked in the building had purchased a mail order bride. But here's the kicker, he was already married. So, unable to bring his new mail order bride home, he kept her at the office. No idea where she hid during the day, but at night she made good use of our little nap room. Gotta feel bad for that poor woman. 1. Worker kept pooping in a trash can. First offense was a slap on the wrist. It could have been a badly timed or unexpected bowel movement. Second offense was let go. 2. Guy called himself Shadow Wolf and liked to sneak up on women and just stand there. Nope, let go. 3. Soldier took lots of drugas while in charge of a large vessel, albeit docked for the night. Initiated proceedings to separate but was stopped by his father, a high-ranking officer. 4. Lots of people sleeping in different places, behind false walls inside of a trailer, up in elevated forklifts, inside lockers, etc. 5. Woman actively cheating on her husband in an office setting with a co-worker. Didn't try to hide it. Other women began to talk about her so she logged into one of their computers and sent out nasty grams posing as them. Fired. We had a very nice HR lady who absolutely spoiled one of the employees, in a wholesome way. He was a young immigrant boy who desperately needed a job, about 15 years old. So she'd go out of her way to give him rides, encourage management to give him raises, and even made him homemade meals. She eventually found out he was stealing all of their customers' credit card information and running them all out dry, which is why we had been receiving so many criminal reports regarding our company. Not only this, but he would flat out steal their purses and wallets while they were there. I'm talking hundreds of thousands mysteriously missing from our customers in a matter of a few months. It absolutely broke her heart when she had to fire him and report him to the police. He was immediately arrested for a large number of crimes and deported. I had something similar at a previous hit job. We were doing inventory of these barcode scanners they use in the plant. They needed an update installed and we figured we'd do inventory at the same time since we need to round all of them up anyway. Well, we only found about 1/3 RD of what we were supposed to have. Some missing is to be expected, but not that many. Well, later I found a bunch in a co-worker's desk drawers. Didn't think much of it at the time. Ran updates and put them back. Still looking for them. I found most of our missing stock for sale on eBay when searching them by serial number. Brought this information to my boss. He tells me to close the door. You always know it's going to be a serious talk when they close the door. He tells me, now you listen here, you didn't see anything if you know what's good for ya. I was fired from that job the next month. Still don't actually know what was going on there, but in hindsight a lot of stuff disappeared. I'd install a bunch of monitors, then go back to that area later and find the old monitors are back. Unload printers off the truck, and then never see them installed. Clearly it was my co-worker and my boss, but sometimes I wonder if it was bigger than that. A guy got caught smoking weed in the bathroom. He only got fired because he had it on premises. If he would have said I'm taking a quick break or just disappeared to his car for 2 minutes, took a few hits, and came back inside, he would have been fine. Was there for 20 years up to that point. My experience, I have seen a lot of wild stuff, but people in HR were the wildest. HR generalist was pregnant. The father was one of the people on the production floor, but she didn't know which one. Fist fights broke out among all the potential fathers. HR VP was fired after a paid conference he attended was actually just a free vacation for him and his family, and he didn't even go to the same city as the conference. HR director was having an affair with it director, both married. When they were confronted, they both denied it, so they were both fired. I saw them 7 years later on a plane coming back from Europe. Still together. Previous HR manager was alright. Smart. Friendly with everyone. Good people skills. He was even an adjunct professor during my last year in college. Taught behavior modification and abnormal psychology. Then his wife divorced him for beating her. He went off the proverbial cliff. Started calling young, attractive girls from the lab to his office over the intercom. Told them he was obsessed with them, and offered them all expense-paid trips to nearby music festivals. Promised them free drugs, whatever they wanted. They all turned him down. One girl received a decent settlement. He was immediately fired when they found out, of course. He has spent the last few years trolling around our college town, trying to duck anything that would give him the time of day. It's outwardly obvious he is on hard drugs. Multiple stalking, assault, domestic violence charges. Banned from 24 local businesses. Absolutely unhearable anywhere serious ever again. Not in HR myself, but I did work closely with a woman who headed up the department. My immediate supervisor was a guy with decades of experience. You would be hard pressed to find a guy with more experience in the industry, and he was incredibly knowledgeable. He was a self-taught tech guy who pretty much knew his way around anything and everything related to computers and programming. A whiz kid who had been there since the earliest days of the company and had worked his way up to being the boss's right-hand man. They had a falling out, and the boss was hell-bent on getting rid of the guy, but he knew he needed a damn good excuse, as everybody knew that he'd been integral in growing the organization, and without him it never would have become anywhere near as successful. The customers loved him. All of us looked up to him. He was just one of those rare guys, smart, good-looking, talented, likable, but he didn't let any of it get to his head. He was a really down-to-earth cool guy. Anyway, the boss keeps digging and eventually strikes gold. The guy had lied on his original job application. He had said he was 18 when he was actually only 17. Everybody knew that the boss had pressured him into doing that because it was illegal for a minor to work in that industry at that time due to issues with insurance. Anyway, he terminated him, and it stuck as there was a clause in the contract stating that lying on any company form is a fireable offense, and there was no statute of limitations on that. The guy had been with the company for something like 30 years and had seen it grow from a small operation above a tobacconist to one of the leading firms in the industry. And because it was for just cause, he didn't receive a dime. I left a few years later and the company finally folded for good a couple of years after that. Last I heard, the guy who was let go was working for his brother putting up fencing. Long time ago I was an IT contractor working for a large company. There was probably about 20 of us on this one team that were all contracted by an staffing firm. It came to light that one of my colleagues had been previously fired as a high school teacher for a scam where he would go to his student's place of employment, Target, Best Buy etc., and steal a bunch of shit in exchange for giving them good grades. When this happened, it was revealed that the consulting firm had not run background checks on any of us. The company we were working for called us into an office and said that they needed to do background checks on all of us, and if there was anything to disclose, now was the time. No one said a word. In the next 2 weeks, one guy was let go because he had done time for mail fraud, another guy for assaulting his ex, another guy for getting kicked out of the military for attacking a senior officer, and another guy, who was a former police officer, who it turned out was under indictment for allegedly molesting an underage girl in his squad car. That was an interesting month. I did some repair work in a food production facility. One of the employees there told me a funny story about a guy that got fired. This guy would come in every day, clock in, do a little work, then disappear. It took a while for anyone to realize he was not working, as this is a big facility, but no one could figure out where he was going. He wasn't leaving the building either. This apparently was a mystery for a while. Finally, it was discovered he had somehow got his hands on a copy of the elevator service key, and he was running the elevator up part way, stopping it, opening the doors, and climbing into the space below the elevator car. Elevators have a crawl space below them for maintenance. He apparently slept down there and then came out before the end of his shift, did a little work like nothing was wrong, then went home. When I worked for the federal government, one of our senior managers was dating 2 women that were his contractors. They lost the contract to a competitor. Not wanting to lose his harem, he demanded the new company hire them. They said lol, no. He cancelled their contract in retaliation. They sued and the truth came out. Our CIO demanded he quit. He said he was a disabled vet, and she couldn't fire him. He literally told her to go duck herself. He ended up just moved. Not fired. Not demoted. They just moved him out of it. He still works there. I worked at a recruiting agency. Had a candidate with an interview lined up. Big biker machinist. Couldn't get a hold of him to set it up. Finally got a hold of his girlfriend. She had kicked him out. She informed us he got fired from his previous job because he threw his boss into a dumpster. Like WWF style. I was envious but still put him on the do not call list. My friend who worked for the state in it. He said the FBI came in one day and took a co-worker out in cuffs. He was using the state's server to host an underage children porn site. My friend in another company who worked in HR told me they had to fire someone in it because they were shipping themselves brand new laptops and monitors to their home. Tens of thousands worth of equipment. He was lucky they didn't call the police. My friend told me as he lived on my block. I ended up knowing him. Went to HS with him. My mom works at a local hospital in HR and she told me this doozy a while back. They had an employee that worked in the maintenance department and also happened to be dating a nurse from that hospital. The employee and the nurse broke things off and the guy had nowhere to live and access to the whole hospital and off-site buildings. He continued to do his job but was living there during his off time. People would report a laptop and blanket and pillow and sleeping set up where there shouldn't be someone sleeping. It was in supply closets or unused offices. Nothing was ever said to him about it, but they had to fire him when the local police had to arrest him during his shift in front of everyone because the ex-GF accused him of stealing her stuff. Weeks later when he came back asking for his stuff, did they know for certain it was him living on the property? My mom said he was a nice guy but it was a really awkward situation. We had a guy in a software company just outside of Seattle that did something similar. One of the VPs had an early morning call and was in the office at about 6:30 AM. He was on a headset and was kind of pacing around the office as he talked when he noticed a light was on in one of the conference rooms. He walked over, still on his call, to turn off the light and found a guy sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag. It turned out this guy had a long commute, so he had started just sleeping in the office and not telling anyone. That doesn't sound like a huge thing, but it's a liability issue. Things like the fire department knowing the building is commercial and not residential and having different response times at night for buildings assumed to be empty. A developer in our team delivered his work and replied to emails at odd hours instead of typical 9-5. Few days it was okay, but when it happens every single day we were a bit alert. We worked remotely and interview was also done remotely. My manager and I decided to call everyone to office for a week. This guy came in like everyone else but didn't speak up during meetings. Always said I'll look into it and respond over email. Now we felt we were onto something. The third day he said that we confronted him to join the discussion then and there instead of replying later on email. He got scared and broke and confessed that he was not the one working on those projects and even somebody else interviewed for him and he was just lip syncing. He was fired on the spot and we added a in-person interview as the last step before every hire. The team recorded a virtual client call for those unable to attend. Manager skimmed through it afterward to make sure the whole thing had been recorded. After everyone left at the end of the meeting, one guy who I assume thought he had also left picked up a bowl within arm's reach and smoked it before leaving the meeting. The worst part is it was a very chill company, they didn't care if you smoked, but had the manager not caught it that would have gone to the client. This is a fun one. Too bad the thread is old enough it probably won't be seen. Anyway, I worked for this charity that raised money for health related causes. This local hospital wanted an exoskeleton for people who are paralyzed and going through physiotherapy. These things are very cool. You strap a person in and when they start working the controls they can walk around on their own, even go up and down stairs. They are also exceedingly expensive and the one they wanted cost about $300k. One of the staff is working with a donor who gives $100k toward it. Another staff person says, "Hey, I have a donor I'm meeting with in a few weeks that might put up the rest." So far so good. About 2 months later these enormous, extremely heavy boxes show up in our office, addressed to the woman who got the first $100k. Turns out, there's an exoskeleton in them. Now, we're not actually at a hospital, we're in an office building, and we sure as duck do not receive the medical equipment we fund. We send the money to the hospital administration and they buy it. So everyone is very confused. The woman's boss, seeing her name on the shipping label, goes to ask her what this is all about, who immediately turns to the other staff member who'd said she might have another donor, and asks her if she got the other $200k for the exoskeleton. The response, "No, they were out of town so I haven't met with them yet." The first staff person then screeches, throws a ducking stapler at the second staff person's head, misses, thank goodness, and then storms out of the office and everyone watches out the window as she heads to her car and drives away. Eventually we piece together what happened. The staff person had told the hospital we could probably fund their exoskeleton, and they told her, "Great, but we need to order it right away because the price is going up soon." So, despite not having the other $200k nor possessing any authority to do so whatsoever, she called up the company who made it and ordered one. Even more baffling, the company sent it to her despite our charity having no account with them, no credit with them, no history, nothing. They just shipped the ducking thing to her as though all of this was totally normal, along with an invoice for $300k. We never did figure out how she pulled that off. We also quickly realize all of this adds up to us owing $300k for an exoskeleton where we only have a third of the money. Anyway, she doesn't come back to work for 3 days. Doesn't answer her phone or texts. Doesn't respond to emails. Nothing. Then, on the 4th day, she shows back up as though nothing had happened and all was totally normal, sat down at her desk and started working as though it were a regular old day. Doesn't say a word to anyone, until her boss discovered her there, at which point she was immediately fired. It was a pain in the ass getting that exoskeleton to the hospital, too, and there were all sorts of problems with the warranty and taking it into their inventory, because they were not set up to receive actual medical equipment from us, just money, and we were the legal owners of the thing, not the hospital. But we eventually worked all that out. Oh yeah, and also fortunately the second staff person finally got around to meeting with her donor, who indeed decided to pay the rest of the balance owing off. It was the most bizarre set of circumstances at work I have ever encountered. I worked in the federal government and there was a lady who worked as a foreign service officer and managed a particular kind of import permit. Had the job for years. One day, the government decides that import permits for this particular item are no longer needed. Almost at the same time, her boss retires and a new manager shows up. She explains that she managed those import permits. Boss is new and is not really familiar with the processes and says okay, keep doing that. 3 years later her group is reorganized and her boss asks about the permits. Boss realizes that she's done nothing for 3 years and assigns her a new set of permits to manage. She refuses. I am 2 years from retirement. I'm going to keep doing what I am doing or I will tell HR and the senior directors that you've let me sit here for 3 years doing nothing. She sat there for 2 more years and did nothing. In the manufacturing industry, work at a huge plant. I was doing some filing work on old terminations. I found out that my company once fired a janitor because he brought his George Foreman grill to work and was running a secret side hustle selling burgers and hot dogs out of the janitor's closet. The report said that he had removed the cleaning supplies from the shelves and lined them up with bags of chips. Not in HR, but a colleague friend discovered that her boss, running an admin team organizing travel, among other things, had used company money to book flights and a rental car for her and her kids to go on a weekend trip. The boss had gotten a more junior member of staff to change some things in the system that covered it up, without them realizing. It was only when my friend had to do a deep dive in the system for some other stuff that she noticed the discrepancies leading to discovering the sneaky theft. From my point of view, this woman was in the office in the morning and then all of a sudden she was gone. Nothing was ever said officially to explain why she disappeared, but my friend told me they gave her the choice of resigning immediately or criminal charges. Criminal charges would have been a very bad look for the organization, so I can see why they wanted to keep it quiet. I had a sales manager drive into a bus stop at 9 AM drunk as a skunk. When the cops arrived and took him away, he spent the entire drive to the station telling them who he was and who he worked for and how much money he made and how stupid they must be to be cops instead of sales managers for a mid-tier telecom company. The real kicker beyond being drunk at 8 AM and yelling at the cops was that in the car with him was a lady sales rep that worked for him and it turns out he'd been having a long time affair with her. She was also drunk as a skunk and instead of doing a coffee run like they were supposed to be doing, they went to his house to drink and fool around and couldn't drive back safely. When I went to his office to terminate him, he tried blaming it all on her. We terminated both of them, and I actually thought he was going to punch me when I walked him to the lobby. I found little bottles of booze in his desk when I cleared things out to send to him. There was this guy in logistics. Nice guy, a little rough around the edges. Known him since I started the job. I had just left an hour role for a new role. Many years later we find out he sexually harassed quite a few of the contractor's third-party people. They worked for either the logistics company or warehouse company we used. Apparently it went on for years. Kinda hard to believe given his usual disposition as a dad joke but frowns upon green jokes kinda guy. This was right under the nose of his wife who worked in the factory. If anyone we might have thought it was his overly fond of lewd jokes teammate, but it was that guy who apparently is a complete gentleman who helped the last 2 victims report upwards and protected them. He also helped uncover the rest of the crap the other guy did. We eliminated the position of one of our longtime employees. She was a pain in the ass, and filed HR complaints all the time for perfume smells and people walking around in sandals that make flopping sounds, radios too loud, etc. All petty bullshit complaints. They really weren't terminable offenses, but we just needed to get rid of her, and part of the deal was she got a 40-week severance package. The terminated employee's manager was relatively new, so right after she was terminated, his VP told him to contact its security and get access to her emails, private directories, and instant messages, IMs. Later that day, the manager pulls me aside and tells me they just fired a longtime female privacy administrator right after lunch. Apparently, when he got access to his terminated employees' IMs, There were violent, disgusting exchanges between his ex-employee and the privacy administrator, who were close friends. They had offensive and racist nicknames for him and other managers and VPs in the company, and all of it was there to see on a company asset. The VP was furious she didn't think to pull those IMs before terminating the employee and giving her a $56,000 severance, because she could have been fired for cause and saved the company a lot of money. I was the guy's supervisor rather than ours. Dude just didn't come back from lunch one day and didn't answer his phone when we called to check on him. It was out of character for him. He never missed a day and never left early, plus he'd given another guy a ride and had dropped him off at the door and said he'd be right in. It was concerning, but I chalked it up to maybe there being some kind of family emergency. Until someone from HR IM'd me to ask if he was in office at the moment, and when I said no, I was asked to please bring him to HR for a meeting if he came in the next day. The next day he came in as normal and had nothing more to say than something personal came up. I walked him over to HR for the meeting, where he was promptly fired, and then walked into a meeting room to chat with the cops. Turned out he had hit a car in the parking lot and drove off. Said car belonged to one of the executives. Never really found out much beyond that, but the general suspicion is that he was under the influence and that was why he ran. My company has a bunch of divisions, including trucking. Guy is president of the trucking division and has a damn good job, but got greedy. He obviously had access to bids we were submitting for potential jobs. He has a friend start up a trucking company in his friend's name, while the guy at my company is a silent partner and in the background. He uses his access of our bids to his advantage in his side trucking company, thus underbidding our company. I don't know how it happened, but he was caught and fired. Lost a great paying job. Working for the city, they purchased a huge garage and gave us a free parking badges. Now you had the option of taking the badge, which was free parking anytime, and believe me, downtown at $20 a day it adds up, so it was smart money to take the badge. Or, you can take the stipend of $150 a month and park wherever you want it. Now, this genius who had been trying to get into the city for years, gets hired as a temp, claws his way to employee, then management. He gets caught double dipping, took the stipend, then parks in the garage. And getting validated, which is only reserved for guests. The sit down was brutal. They showed him pictures of him entering the garage, punching in, punching out, and then getting validated. Asked him, can you explain this? What could he say? Fired.